Welcome to the Super Region 2 Regional Final Preview Pod. I'm Coach Poe. As always, I'm joined by KFerg and Chris. I'm excited, man. I'm excited for the regional finals. I think this is about to be a really, really exciting weekend of football.
All the weekends have been exciting, especially in Super Region 2. You just never know what you're going to get, man. It's like a box of chocolates.
You know what? It's funny. I said that expression a little earlier about something else, but you're 100% right. It is, Chris, because, I think every week has provided us with really exciting games, maybe outcomes that we didn't predict or maybe we fantasized about but didn't really think were going to happen. And we got them. We got those outcomes. And it's been a really, really exciting couple weeks of football. And it all culminates this weekend in the regional finals with two teams that I don't know were on everybody's bingo card. I know for sure one of the teams for me for sure. So I think what this is providing us is an exciting weekend of football across all four regions, but particularly here in Super Region 2, Chris.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's take a look at this bracket. So last weekend, we had Valdosta State hosting Miles. We're going to dive into that game here in a minute, dive into that a little bit deeper. And then we had Lenore-Rhyne hosting Virginia Union, two unseeded teams and two teams that I don't know that we necessarily thought would be playing each other in the second round of the playoffs, but here we are. And that sets up a Valdosta State, Virginia Union regional final, Chris. I know you're excited about this game. I know that there's some history there we're going to talk about with these two teams. But first, I think we need to dive into this thing and kind of take a look at what got us to this regional final.
Let's do it.
So Virginia Union on the road between the bricks at Lenore-Rhyne, 44-12 Virginia Union win. Chris, go ahead and we're going to queue up some highlights here, but go ahead and give us kind of your thoughts, your breakdown as you've had time to digest it, look at the stats, and really kind of absorb this Virginia Union win.
Well, Lenore-Rhyne is definitely not an easy place for a lot of people to play. It's where some teams have just gone to wither away. And if you thought that this game was going to be one that was going to be the score end up the way it did, it was such a decisive win. Yeah, I would have been really skeptical, and I think a lot of people would have as well. You kind of saw where VU took the early lead, and they never relinquished that lead in this game, even though you saw that touchdown reception by Adonis McDaniel. They missed Lenore-Rhyne missed the extra point. And so after that, VU just, man, they just sort of pounded away at the Bears. And it was really a combination of R.J. Rosales, Jada Vyas, and Curtis Allen, the three people that you see on the left side of the screen there. I mean, there were drives where essentially like, okay, they complete like one pass, and then it was like those three rushing. And before you knew it, it was like 20-6 at halftime, and VU just didn't let up after that. And so it was a really decisive win for VU. But man, like, if you're Lenore-Rhyne, it was one of those things where we talked about last week that, for LR to win this game, they were going to have to, basically do a repeat of what they did at West Alabama, because they really haven't been able to. They've demonstrated they can't run the ball, not in any meaningful way, and so they kind of had to take to the air. And you see Jalen Ferguson, 19 for 41. That just shows how just unbalanced they were, and unfortunately for them, the second half of the season has just been injuries. We saw that in this game, like Sandra Yates, dynamic wide receiver, dynamic kick returner.
Yeah.
They were able to gash VU early in returns, and he had an opportunity to do it, a third time, and he did it the first two times. The third time he tried it, and it was like he pulled a hamstring or something, and he was done. He was done after that. He tried to go, but that's just been the story of Lenore-Rhyne, and unfortunately there's only so much of that you can take in Division II, because depth becomes a concern against good teams, and VU took advantage of that.
Yeah, and to that point, I felt like Virginia Union came in, they played a balanced, and they didn't necessarily need to play a balanced game, right? Like they were able to establish the run over 300 yards rushing. And when you do that, that's going to set you up very nicely offensively. It's going to give you, you don't have to throw the football to be successful. Yeah, RJ was 10 for 17, but you take that pressure off of him of having to complete some of those passes because your run game is so effective. And Jada Byers, 38 carries. I mean, that's just grinding you out. And one of my takeaways, I think, when some of the game that I saw was Lenore Ryan and their tackling. Defensively, I felt like they were arm tackling a lot. They just weren't driving through contact and taking ball carriers back. And that there was a couple plays I saw Jada Byers getting yards after first contact. I mean, he's just driving his feet, bouncing off of defenders, and he's adding 3, 4, 5 yards. And when you do that, that adds up. That adds up over time, over a drive. That's going to add up, and that's going to be that first down. That's going to be, establishing the run and shortening the possessions for Lenore Ryan. But I think they got into a situation, like you said, Chris, where they're struggling tackling. They're pretty much in the chase. I mean, it's 20-6 at the half, so you're pretty much in the chase now of trying to get back in this ball game, and you have to start throwing the football. Jalen Ferguson, 19 of 41, not as consistent as we saw last week, and kind of the tail of the tape for this team, right? Like we talked about on Sunday night 2 weeks ago, they kick a field goal to win it against Anderson. This week we kind of saw that team come back where, just inconsistent 54 rush yards on 20 carries. It is hard to do much when you're struggling to run the football and you're struggling to gain first downs on the ground. You have to pass the ball. When you're 19 of 41, that's not a recipe for success with two interceptions. You can't turn the football over to a talented team like Virginia Union. And I think, Chris, Virginia Union is a team that is a veteran-laden group, right? They've been through this process before. They've been in the playoffs. They've been on the road. We'll talk about that here in a second, but they've been on the road. They've been to Valdostas. They've been to Lenore Ryan's. They've been to the Wingets. Like, those tough places to play is nothing new for that group, and they've been together through it all. And I think that counts for something. I really do. As a coach, you sit there and you say, hey, if you can keep this nucleus together, we got a chance. And I think Coach Parker has done that. On the flip side of it, Lenore Ryan, great season, but a lot of guys in the transfer portal, a lot of guys out of the transfer portal, and that's not a knock to them. That happens in coaching turnover. That's kind of part of the game today with the transfer portal and what we see. And sometimes it takes time to build that cohesion. Yeah, sometimes you get lightning in a bottle, but that's less and less than people think, right? Everybody wants that, but again, a stellar season to make it second round of the playoffs. But when you get in these tight games, sometimes that veteran leadership and that cohesion can sometimes account for things that you can't necessarily quantify.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Dwayne McGee like the SoCon Player of the Year this year?
Sure was. Yep, he was.
I mean, that's the kind of talent that Lenore Ryan had.
Yeah.
They the coach goes to Mercer. Some of those players from Lenore Ryan go to Mercer, and one of those folks was somebody who stood out, and Dwayne McGee, running back, and he's performing at the FCS level. So the fact that Lenore Ryan comes, basically has to sort of rebuild the team in some major areas, and to be able to do what they did, I mean, that's remarkable in year one. So
it is.
Kudos to him.
Couldn't agree more, Ferg. I mean, I think that's a point that we don't talk about very often. Like, that's a great job getting this deep in the playoffs. A 10-3 season, that's nothing to turn your nose up at. Like, that's a phenomenal season, like we talked about. And I think when you are able to build on that and bring that in, having to replace some of that firepower, man, that's hard. That's really, really hard, and great job by that staff. But I think Virginia Union came in, they had a game plan. They were unfazed in critical situations in this game.
Yeah, they were.
And you hear Coach Parker talk about that, Chris, in his post-game presser. He talks a little bit about this team and what they mean. And so we have a little bit of a longer, in-depth look here. So we're gonna listen to what Coach Parker had to say here in the post-game from Virginia Union.
First of all, guys, congratulations on the win today. Just kind of give me a recap of the day and kind of talk about the journey to get to this point of the season.
Again, back in August, I said this was a team that can compete for the national championship, and I think some people laughed at that, and didn't think that we were capable. Now, we're one of 8 teams that's still playing. We're just blessed. I'm blessed to have a group that has pretty much stayed the course and locked in and done a lot of the things that we've asked and play some good daggone football. So I'm just happy. It's beyond words right now. Well, it was I guess the hunger you kind of seen in their eyes, when we left Kutztown, Pennsylvania last year. And that was early November. And then we had a great off season, and we put together a lot of things that I think that I, I've never been to the national championship, but a lot of things that I heard the national championship teams doing what they have, and I thought we had it. An excellent spring, a great summer, a great camp, and it led us to that point where I had that feeling. So, and again, people kind of, again, laughed at it again after we had, a couple early on losses. And again, now look where we are. I think, again, when you get to the playoffs, it's not really a loss. It's more of a lesson, because if you got there, that means you're a good team. And when you get there, you just got to find the elements to win. And these guys, this is their senior year, and this is their 3rd time going to the playoffs. So being experienced, having that finishing element that I think these guys had, and that never give up type of attitude that these guys had, it pushed it on through the team, because we got a lot of guys that this is their 3rd year going to the playoffs. I'm just happy with the success we've been able to put together this year.
So you kind of hear Coach talk about that, Chris. Like, he talks about that team staying together and kind of getting galvanized at Kutztown last year in that loss, and kind of how it drove them into off-season workouts and in winter, in spring, and in the summer, and into fall camp. And you kind of heard his thoughts on how that galvanized this team.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about CIAA schools when they get multiple opportunities at the playoffs. The first year they generally don't do very well, or they may not have enough of the experience to know, hey, you need that extra effort, and so they just don't win in the first year of the playoffs. This is their 3rd time getting a shot at the playoffs with a lot of this group, and so 3rd time seems to be a 2nd time is a charm, but it took them 3 tries, and they've certainly made the most of it. So yeah.
Well, and I think, and the last thing I'll say to that is, I think it you talk about the learning experiences. I think that is so important, because you and I thought Coach Parker said it best, Chris. They're not losses; they're learning experiences. And if you take it for what it is, I think if you go in with that mindset, I think it really. I think if you go in with that mindset that we're going to learn and we're going to use this, that benefits your team, as opposed to saying we lost and it's a defeat. Because you heard him say it, 2 losses earlier in the year, right? They lose to Virginia State the week before, they come back and beat them, and they never got down on that. They used that to galvanize them throughout this season. So, well, obviously there we go. Camera's working again. But obviously, all right. So obviously we're having some technical difficulties here, but it is what it is. But obviously that talks about the just the gumption of that team and the grit of this team that we see. And we're going to talk about them here in a little bit, but let's dive into last week's other game that we saw, Chris. And that was Miles at Valdosta State. And Valdosta State with a 33-17 win here. A game that was, I as you watched it, I felt like Valdosta State was able to keep him at arm's length, but not far enough to put him away, still leaving Miles in the ball game. A sloppy game for the Blazers, but it was a game where you see some pictures here, Chris, from the contest, but a game where Valdosta State was they were able to get up. You know, they score and they score, and then they miss the PAT. They're able to score again, but Miles answered right back after that first touchdown. Right, so it's 6-3. Valdosta State scores again to make it 13-3, and they add a field goal, so it's only 16-3 at the half. You feel like a Miles score coming out of the first half, or into the second half rather. This game's a completely different ball game, Chris. It's 16-10 at that point, and it's a one-score game. So Valdosta State not really able to put them away. I thought the Miles defense did some really nice things to them, really kind of kept them in tow, didn't really let that game get out of hand. And then offensively, they just couldn't get it going really until the fourth quarter. But that first half, it was kind of Valdosta State kept them at arm's length, but not really able to put them away. You come out of the half, Valdosta State comes out scoring 14 points in the third quarter and pretty much make it a 30-3 ball game. And at that point, you're like, okay, it's cruise control here for Valdosta. This thing could get out of hand pretty quickly. You didn't really know what to expect. And then hold on a second now. Miles comes back here in the fourth quarter. They score a touchdown late in the game on a fourth down, and then aided by a pass interference on another one. And they tried the onside kick with about 4 minutes left in the game, didn't get it, and make it 33-17. So really a closer game than maybe you feel like the game was as you watched it throughout. But a sloppy game for Valdosta State, just weren't clicking on all cylinders. Sammy Edwards was 14 of 28 for 178 and a touchdown. Blake Kester, 20 carries there for 132 and 2 tutties. Added at 4 catches for 32 yards and another touchdown in the air. And then Alfonso Franklin, 10 carries, 84 yards. A great day by most accounts, great day for the Blazers. Just not that high-powered scoring offense I think that we were used to seeing. Great job by Miles, slowing down that offense, right? We talked about how solid their defense is. The question was, could they get it going offensively? They didn't really get it going like we thought they could. They're a running team. They got put in a situation where they had to pass the football. That is not their bread and butter. And I feel like that they didn't have the ability to pass the ball effectively to kind of shrink that game. If you look at it, though, Chris, Cam Ivory was 22 of 41 for 224 and 2 touchdowns. Gennaro Scott, 17 carries for 54 yards. And Jaquel Fells for 7 catches for 92 yards. So you look at that offensive production, not really what you needed to do. And we questioned that last week, if you remember. If you watched the show last week, we questioned, hey, could Miles' offense keep pace with Valdosta? And we found out the answer was no on this one, Chris.
Yeah, and I mean, just looking at some of these numbers, right? Miles had a couple of things that really didn't work out for him. They in the second quarter, they played keep away. I mean, they had the ball for 12 minutes in the second quarter.
Out of 15.
Came away with nothing.
Yeah.
And they were like 5 of 8 of third down. But their drives were stalling at midfield. I mean, that's how much of a struggle it was for the Golden Bears. And third quarter, they only managed one first down. Like so the stats don't tell everything in terms of the overall numbers, because Miles, their defense was trying to keep them in the game, but the offense just couldn't muster, and that was really the difference in this game.
Yeah. Well, and you had the pass interference in the fourth quarter, and then you had the fourth down. They scored on a fourth down. So it wasn't like the scoring was easy for them offensively. Right. They had to grind it out, and they had to find a way to score. I think it says something about that Miles offense. They didn't throw in the towel. That Miles team didn't quit. Like, they scored in the fourth quarter, and they had to do it in a gritty way. They just couldn't get it going. And I think it's deflating, like you said, in the second quarter when you hold the football for 12 minutes, but you come away with no points. Like, that can be deflating to a program.
Yeah, agree.
So, and going to Valdosta, not an easy place to go play, particularly on a Thanksgiving week. It's you don't typically have a big fanfare down there on those holiday weeks. So it's just a tough place to play. And Valdosta found a way to do it. Miles came up a little bit short. I think it's a great season for the Miles program. And hopefully, like we talked about in the last game, they can learn from this, right? They can learn from this and come back next year, because they had a big win the week before against a gritty Carson Newman team. And then here they come to Valdosta in a game where it wasn't I'm not going to say it was out of hand.
No.
So we have a couple press conferences to go to. We're going to go to Miles's first, and then we'll dive into Coach Jackson's here in a second. So let's dive in.
Well, I'll just start off by saying much respect to Valdosta State, Coach Jermaine Jackson and his team, his coaching staff. Really good football team. They did a great job today. We left some opportunities out there, offensively, defensively, special teams, and good football teams are going to capitalize off those things. But this 2024 Miles College football team has so much to be proud of, so many things. The first team to win 10 games in a regular season, the first team to win 10 straight games, the first team to earn a home playoff game, the first team to win an NCAA playoff game. So what I told the team after the game was chest out and chin up. We have nothing to be ashamed of, everything to be proud of, and
first of all, I just want to say I'm not the only one having camera issues here. But the second thing, to that though, Chris, is, gosh, how do you not get inspired to play for him? You know, like Coach is just in there and just talk about the successful year they've had and all the things they've been able to do. Like how do you not get fired up to go play for a coach like him?
Yeah, Sam Shade has always found ways to truly motivate his team, and they're always going to be a tough out. Miles is always going to have something, ready for you, and definitely it kind of goes back to some of the things we talked about towards the end of the season. The way that Miles was a bit quiet, going through conference play, and all of a sudden, because we had the shiny, flashy object that was Clark Atlanta. And then they got to Miles, and Miles just drew back and just waylaid them and knocked them out.
They did.
And had to do it again, and they did it in even bigger fashion. And they were just sort of quiet and just, quietly working away. And they not only snuck into the playoffs, but they got that home game. Really, when you think about the SIC, you think about Albany State, you think about Tuskegee. You might even think about, Morehouse, just because of that name recognition. And Miles is, a little bit in the shadow of all that. But, when it comes to football, they've been one of the better performing teams for some time. And so to see them take that to that next level and join some elite company in that conference is definitely is very inspiring, and it feels great.
And yeah, I couldn't agree more. We've got Coach Jackson here, a little bit longer than Coach, but let's dive into Coach Jackson and the Valdosta Blazers.
Yeah, Blazers win. We like to say that around here. And we make no qualms about it, no matter where we are and what time of the year we're in. Definitely not the game that we wanted to play. A lot of mistakes, a lot of penalties that we committed that we normally don't commit. But we did have some shining lights. We didn't turn the ball over. They're the number one team in the country in turnovers gained and turnover margin, and we were able to not commit a turnover, which is a big deal. But we did see their number one red zone defense. We saw how that held up, of them not allowing people to score touchdowns. And so for us, I'm not going to sit here and say we got to go back to the basics, because we try to stay basic. But we've got to get to work tomorrow to fix some things that we knew better on, and just have some reminders. We made some day one mistakes. I don't know if it was because it was after a bye week or what it was, but we definitely got to get some things fixed. I got full confidence in the group of guys in that locker room that we're going to get that done. But certainly anytime you can win.
And take this win and move forward with it.
Extremely important. you're talking about a group of guys that we haven't been in this situation before. I think people read too much into what other people say we are, right? Like, oh, you're the number one team in the region, you're this, you're that. This group of guys have not played in this tournament together. It's not like it used to be where guys are 4-year guys and they've been to the tournament, they understand. This was new. This was new. And now that we have that experience, as long as we do what we've normally done, which is once we have an experience, we fix the issues from the experience the following week, then I've got full confidence that our guys will come back next week and respond. And the good thing is they've set themselves up to be at home in this tournament. And that's always big. We play better, I think, here at home in the comforts of our own homes and things of that nature. So it's funny because you really don't associate Valdosta State home with an air raid with playing great defense. We've gotten to the point now on defense where giving up 17 points is like a travesty. Where my first year here, we were begging to give up 23. And so you can tell that these guys take a lot of pride in it. I'm glad it happened to us so they can get back to being hungry, because sometimes you think things are just going to happen because the averages say it's going to happen. But definitely it takes a weight off of everybody in the program when you can rely and play some defensive snaps, keep getting the ball back to give your offense opportunities to try to go and score. So it's a complimentary type of way, but we certainly enjoy it.
Wow. I think what, as you listen to that, right, you have to, Coach Jackson talks about, like, hey, these guys haven't been here before. And he talked about, kind of alluded to the transfer portal. And I think that builds into the next part of what he said was, you look at a team like Valdosta who doesn't have a lot of guys that have been in this situation before, and you come off of a bye week, and everybody thinks the bye week is a great thing. And it really does. It helps you rest, helps you get healthy at this point in the season, and it's a great thing to have. But sometimes you can lose that edge, that flow that you develop over the course of the season. And so sometimes when that happens, it takes you a little bit to get that back. And like he said, hopefully this is a humbling experience to them where they can kind of build on that and maybe get that fixed for next week.
Yeah. When I think about, some of the things that he said, there were a lot of guys from Valdosta who graduated after last season. They were a team that got into the spot that they're in now. And then, it rained and it sidelined everything. But I think what really sticks out is what he said about, the defense. He's a defensive guy.
Yeah.
And the way that they're just sort of playing defense, that's a big deal. That's why, Miles scoring 17 is like, wow, based on how well they played on defense. Certainly scored more than what West Florida was able to do.
Right.
So that kind of stuff really stands out. Because they say defense wins championships, and you need that level of defense to go far into the playoffs, especially after what we've seen in the other super regions, right?
Yeah.
Harris scoring 78. Yeah. Who scores 78 in the second round of the playoffs like that?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. For sure.
Just things like that where, you're going to have to make a run. Like, you got to have defense. And I agree with what he's saying there.
Yeah, and I think that's something we haven't seen we haven't seen that in a while from Valdosta. Was a defense that is 17 points is, oh my gosh, that's something that it hasn't been like that. So to see that, you're right. And I think you take for granted sometimes good defenses and how important they are and how they can carry you. So this is a big deal for Valdosta.
Mm-hmm. 3 shutouts this year.
Well, how many?
3.
Wow. In the Gulf South, 3.
No, well, 2 of them were, so Erskine, Chowan. And the middle of the road CIAA team that we know as Fayetteville State, who they shut out all three of those, and then they had some other games shorter, only one single digits. West Florida was single digits. So yeah. I mean, you're not going to score a lot of points against them in most cases, and that's been their season.
Yeah. Well, and I think when and I'm sure the 17 points that Miles scored doesn't sit well with them, right? Like, I'm sure they're getting back to work this week saying, hey, we can't do that again this week because we'll be in trouble. We can't give up points because Virginia Union has a really good defense, and you can't put yourself behind the 8 ball with them either. So,
right.
That kind of sets it up here, Chris, as we now start talking about Virginia Union. This week's showdown, Super Region Final, is a 10-3 Virginia Union team at an 11-0 Valdosta State team. And when you look at those stat lines, Chris, the offensive scoring is dang near the same. Virginia Union gives up a little bit more on defense, 16.3 compared to the 9.8 from Valdosta, but averaging 42 points per game and two defenses that hold teams under 17 points. That's that's a recipe for a really, really good football game.
Yeah. Speaking of defense, VUU has 2 shutouts of their own and 2 other games in which they held teams to less than 10 points. So, I mean, they have their own resume.
So basically what you're telling me is if you like high-powered offenses and stingy defenses, tune into this game because it could go either way.
Right.
You could turn into this thing and it's 3-0 at the half, or it's 48-49 come the second quarter. It can go either way on this one. It's basically what you're telling me.
Right. Pretty much.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at Valdosta for a second, Chris. You look at them, they're undefeated, 11-0. If Valdosta is going to come away with a win and represent Super Region 2, what is their, and you're like, what are your thoughts here? What are they going to have to do well to be able to beat Virginia Union?
Well, the defense, they're going to have to find ways to essentially neutralize VUU's offense in general. Like that's one way to do it. Teams have keyed in on the run to hope to stop the pass. Now you're able to sort of like slow them down in both aspects is the challenge. The other piece of that though is, maybe you're trying to keep VUU offense off the field altogether. It seems like Valdosta has a preference to run and mix in the pass when necessary. And VU has played Virginia State, Wingate, and Lenore Ryan in successive weeks, and all of them have opted to sort of test the secondary. And if there's one person who can really work that secondary, it's probably going to be Sammy Edwards. I'm really curious to see if Valdosta just decides to like go back to the air raid of what they did, last year, because if they have to, they're capable of doing it. And so I'm just wondering if maybe there's less emphasis on the run in this game and more on the pass.
Well, and I think you're onto something there, because I think for Valdosta State, you look at them and you say, hey, wait a minute now. We're an air raid team. Like you think about Valdosta, you think about air raid, and you made a point. Like last year, they threw the ball. I feel like part of the reason they run the football, and they've run it pretty successfully, is teams have taken away the pass from them. They're opening up the run game. They've been able to take advantage and exploit that a little bit. So the question is, what does Virginia Union do here? Do they force them to throw the football, do something that we haven't seen a lot of this year? Or do you say, hey, we're going to take the pass away and we're going to make you grind it out and run the football and dip it and dunk it down the field if you're going to throw it? We're not going to give up the big plays. We're not going to give up the big shots.
Right. We're
going to make you just grind it down the field and know that our defense is going to create a turnover in some way.
Right. Yeah.
Because, I think for Valdosta State, Chris, I think I think you said something there. If I'm Virginia Union, I'm going to play, and I think this is a recipe for both teams, right? I'm going to keep it. If I'm the secondary, I'm going to keep it in front of me. I'm not going to give up the big plays. I'm going to rally up and make a tackle. And if I'm going to run, I'm going to play good run defense there. I'm going to fill the run lanes, and I'm going to tackle. I'm going to make those passes that you throw me. They're going to be the dips and the dunks outside. I'm not going to give you anything deep across the middle or anything deep corners. I'm going to keep it in front of me, rally up, make a tackle, and then and then on the run game, I'm going to try to contain the box, not let you outside, and make you run tackle to tackle. And I think if you do that, if you're Valdosta, if you're Virginia Union, it makes it real hard because you're forcing Valdosta to have to run in between the tackles, and you're making them dip it and dunk it. And you just hope that, hey, they get tired of that Sammy Edwards tries to force a pass down the field, and you get an interception and create a turnover. I think that's for me, Valdosta State. They have to be able to execute their offense. They have to be able to hit a couple shot plays, loosen up the defense, and keep them on their heels. They can't let that Virginia Union defense dictate what they do offensively.
Agreed. Yeah, agreed.
And I think for Valdosta State, I think defensively they have to play a really, really big game. We've talked about that. We've talked about how important the defense is. They're going to have to play. I'm not going to say out of their minds, Chris, but they're going to have to play pretty dang good. They're going to have to keep Jada Byers and company in the pocket, keep RJ Rosales in the pocket, not let him out and extending the passes on his own. And again, keep it in front of them, not give up a shot play, not give up a deep pass, keep him in the pocket, make him force ball into tight windows, which I think he did a little bit more of this past week, but 2 weeks ago he was scrambling out and dipping and dunking on Wingate. I think you got to keep him in the pocket, right? I think you got to keep them in the pocket, not let him get outside, extend plays with his feet. And you defensively, you have to tackle. You cannot arm tackle. You've got to wrap up on first contact, and you got to get the ball carrier on the ground. And you need that first guy gets there. You got to have 10 of your buddies there repping at the football and getting him on the ground. You cannot give those running backs from Virginia Union any second efforts. It's got to be contact on the ground. And I know they're working on it this week, but if you're Valdosta State, your defense has to play out of their mind to keep that offense kind of in check.
Yep, agree.
And I think, and Chris, I'm curious to know, Virginia Union, right? Like we talk about how they've kind of played pretty complimentary football this year, right? Like they've been able to throw the football and run the football. Last week they didn't have to. They could run the football. They established a run early. What do they have to do to Valdosta offensively to kind of give them a chance here down the stretch in this ball game?
Well, VU's got a couple of things that they need to do. I know they're going to try to test that line of Valdosta early just to see what they can do and what they can get. I think they need to continue to be or thinking about being creative because, that's what the playoffs all about, is having some degree of creativity and how you want to approach the game and have some wrinkles here and there. They attempted to do that last week with the fake punt. It didn't quite work, but that's okay.
Yeah.
You want to see at least that they're thinking about doing it. They're, and they're trying to do something.
Yeah.
Ever since that Virginia State loss, you've kind of seen them try to get the ball into Jada Byers' hands in different ways, a swing pass, lining him up in different ways. And you got to continue to do that. You cannot be stale on the offensive side of the ball. I think also you have, Virginia Union also talks about we're going to take what you give us. And I wonder if they start to key in on RJ, do you bring Watt Wright back into the fold, as more of a pocket passer?
Good question.
It's like kind of like what would you mention? Like, so, okay, we're going to force RJ to be a pocket passer. Well, maybe it's a Mark Wright time.
Right.
You can, at this point, you can't just hey, if it's not there and you've tried and it's not there, you might need to try something else. And they have the flexibility to do that. So if you're the defense, you really have to keep everything in front of you. Like one of the things that really stood out with Lenore Ryan is that, Adonis McDaniel had that long touchdown play.
Yep.
And that was sort of like they were going sideline to sideline and dinking and dunking. And sometimes that lulls you into a false sense of security. And if you're not careful, Samuel Edwards could throw the ball down the field, and VU got lucky that those passes weren't caught when they should have been caught.
Yeah.
So you don't want them to take those many chances and connect on those. I think if you're VU, the other thing kind of goes back to what I mentioned last week. Valdosta does. They're almost identical in how many times they've been to the red zone, but Valdosta has had to settle for field goals a little more often. And again, you're going back to that recipe of settling for field goals in this case. Both teams actually pretty good in third down conversions. So that's another area that, the winner of this game is probably going to be forcing the other team off the field and not letting them convert as often as they have in the past. This feels like the exact opposite of the last time these two met. It feels like it might be a bit of a low scoring affair. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think you said that. Like, I think that's a good point, right? Like, for Virginia Union, they've shown they can be multifaceted, and I think they will need to do that against Valdosta this week. I think they need to be able to run the football. They need to be able to run at the quarterback position as well, but also be able to take what they give them and dip and dunk and throw the football with what the defense is giving them. And they showed that against Wingate. They didn't necessarily need to show that against Lenore Ryan, but they showed that against Wingate. They need to be ready to play that style of offense, that complementary style of offense, and be able to execute and score touchdowns, right? Because I think you said that touchdown to field goal thing, that math doesn't math right there. You have to be able to score. And I think if you can stay off balance, let's say, and keep Valdosta off balance, and you're distributing the football and things like that, I think it becomes very hard to defend, particularly when you get into a rhythm. I think if they can get into a rhythm and they can get established early, I think that'll open up some stuff in the offense for them. Defensively, we talked about it. You got to keep the ball in front of you. You got to rally up. You got to make tackles. You got to force Valdosta into second long, third and long, and you basically have to make them throw. You're going to have to make them get out of their comfort zone and down in distance situations and disrupt their offense if you're a Virginia Union. So I think that's kind of the keys to this thing for the Panthers. So either way, Chris, I think it's going to be a really, really big game. I think it's going to be an exciting game. You made a mention a second ago, and I'm not going to let this one go. You made a mention about the last time these two teams played. And I guarantee you that neither one of these teams have forgotten about the last time these two teams played. In fact, we didn't have it in the press conference clip, but the Virginia Union guys were asked about the last who they were playing, and they found out they were playing Valdosta, and they remember that game. They remember how big of a deal it was that they went to Valdosta and they won that football game. On the flip side of it, I bet you they remember, hey, Virginia Union came in here and beat us last time we played. And what you said was a very high-scoring game, a 45-40 victory for Virginia Union. And guess what we have, Chris?
Uh-oh.
We got a little video on it, buddy. We got a little video on this on this game. So let's go ahead and take a look at it, buddy. Let's go ahead and take a look at the 45-40 victory.
Roll that beautiful bean footage. 2 years ago, Tremaine kind of hinted on this, and that was that 5 and 6 Valdosta team, they had a hard time doing much of anything, and a lot of that had to do with they just had a hard time stopping the run. Here you got Jada Byers, who sort of just bounced around, broke tackles. I'm sure Lenore Ryan is probably having that in their dreams right now, that nightmares. And you just saw this over and over again. There's that man again. Rushing for another touchdown, man, it was so back and forth, because you're like, can VU continue down this pace? And lo and behold, they kept proving it over and over again that yes, we can continue to to run the ball. Jada Byers at that time rushed for a school record 318 yards in that game and had like 340 yards of total offense when you threw in the receiving yards. He has since broken that record, actually. He broke that record, that rush yard record against Bowie State this year. But and I think that kind of brings me up to a nice little fun fact. So today we're going to play a little game, and that little game is. Chris? So, can you take a guess as to what the letter of the day is?
The letter of the day. I have no clue. Give me a hint here. Give me a hint.
Well, it's a type of formation that a football team can run.
I.
The I formation. Yes, letter of the day is I. Because what happened was VUU ran the I formation against Valdosta the first time they met. And they ran it, and they ran it, and they ran it. The kids of today may not know about that repeat button on the CD player. You hit repeat, and it just kept going and going and going and going. And also, they ran the I formation multiple times against Lenore-Ryan last week. And that I formation, when I saw that I formation come out and I saw it kept going, I said, this game's over. This game's over. Because at that point, when VUU knows that they got him. We got him. So
if we see the I formation on Saturday,
repeatedly, we know something's up at that point. We know it. So that's what happened. They're one of the few teams that run the I formation from time to time. That's not their base offense, but they're not afraid to use a fullback. They're not afraid to show those multiple sets. I love it. I love it so much. And that's the thing about VUU. Like, they won their first playoff game with the pass. They won their second playoff game with the run. All right. So what is it going to be this time?
Yeah.
The other thing I didn't mention that VUU has to show up, because if they don't, it could come back to bite them, is special teams. They've been giving up some big return yards on kickoffs. That's allowed teams to shorten the field. And you can't continuously do that. And so that's another area that they've got to.
And to that point, I think anytime you play in big games like this that are high powered, like we're about to see, I think, special teams is oftentimes the difference. I can't tell you, Chris, how many times, I'm going to pull this back up so you can see these stats. I think I can't tell you how many times as a coach I've been in a game, and if you win two-thirds of the game, two phases of the game, you're going to win the game. 99% of the time, you're going to win a football game. And every game I've ever won as a coach, you win when you win the special teams battle and one other phase, right? Like every game I've ever won, I've won the special teams battle and then one area of the game, if not both. But when I lose, when I've lost games, it's because you lose the special teams battle, right? Like you may win the offense, but you lose special teams and defense, or if you win the defense, So I think special teams is going to be a very, very, they have to play solid. You don't have to do anything out of your mind. If you're given the opportunity to kick a field goal, I think you need to make the field goal. You need the points. This game is going to be a game of points. So I think you're onto that, but I think you got to play solid in that area of the game. And, one of those plays could be the one that sparks it. One of those plays could be the one that big kickoff return, big punt return could be the thing, or a blocked punt. That can be the thing that gets you. And I can get that momentum, get great field position, flip a field, come away with the points. 45-40 last time these two teams played. There's some fireworks there, man. There's some fireworks, and I think both of these teams, Chris, they remember it, and I think they're excited for the next opportunity to play this game.
Yeah, the stakes couldn't be higher. Yes, you beat Valdosta the first time you played them, or the first time in a long time. Man, the stakes are so much higher right now. And make no mistake, those guys in Valdosta, Georgia, ain't forgot that game, especially the coaching staff. They ain't forgot that game.
No, I guarantee you that highlight or that film has been on that locker room this week. They know what's up. Both teams know what's up, and a win for Virginia Union here would be unprecedented, right? Like that's ultimately probably the biggest win they probably have had, if not one of the biggest. And for Valdosta State to get back to where they want to get to, this game is a necessary win for them. So a lot on the line for both of these teams.
I agree.
So, well, the camera has not been good to me tonight. It's freezing up and going sideways here. So, anyway, we're gonna that's gonna about cover it, Chris. Any departing thoughts that you have as we wrap up? I guess is probably our final Super Region playoff pod show for 2024. I don't think we have another one next week. Any departing thoughts that you might have?
I couldn't be happier that the two teams left are these two teams. I couldn't be happier. Yeah. I am satisfied.
I think it's going to be an exciting game. I couldn't echo that thought anymore, Chris. I mean, it's going to be a very exciting week. Two very talented, deserving teams that are going to get the opportunity to take the field with a lot on the line. And this postseason has been absolutely fantastic to us as fans. It's provided a lot of excitement, a lot of upsets, a lot of solid wins and exciting games down the stretch. So I expect this one to have the same. And I think we made our pick'ems on Sunday night. I think as with every game that's being played this weekend, you flip a coin and we could see probably the other team winning this thing. So that's what you asked for. And
who did you pick?
I think I took Valdosta. I don't even remember. I'm almost positive I took Valdosta. I think you took Virginia Union. I took Valdosta.
I did.
So I don't have any Valdosta State gear to put on like we did last year, but yeah. So I'm excited, Chris. I think it's been a pleasure being able to sit here every week and kind of recap these games with you. And hopefully, I don't think we'll have one next week into the semis, but if we do, that just adds to it. So really excited here, Chris. And, really thank you for coming in every week. Thank you to our viewers and everybody for tuning in and watching us kind of ramble on here about Super Region 2 football.
Well, thank you for taking the lead on this. So you deserve your flowers too, King.
Well, I appreciate it. And it has been a lot of fun, Chris, and look forward to talking this week as we watch some football. And thank you to everybody here for taking time again every week with us and recapping Division II football here in Super Region 2. So thank you very much. And as always, for KFerg, I'm Coach Poe, and enjoy your football Saturday.